Greeting, brothers and sisters. Very weird. Greetings, brothers and sisters. That was, did I say greeting? I don't know. Very weird day. I'm feeling weird today. The whole Britney video. I just went through all kinds of things trying to get the thing monetized. And, it wasn't vulgarity. And I took out the only thing that I could think it would be, which was, Britney dancing on the pole, right? And I commented about that, which was fine in another video. And so I didn't understand why it was demonetized. And then I got a message from AdSense about something. I'll read that in just a bit. So it's just been a weird day for me. I've had a little headache today, and my wife and I are both talking about it. I feel just kind of off today. I don't know if something's going on. And so one of my viewers sent me this, 2 gaffes to start off with JoJo Magoo here. He's going to get pooped on right here in just a moment.
Work we're doing to lower costs for American families.
Keep your eye on right around the American flag area. Some bird's going to poop on him here.
And put rural America at the center of our efforts to build a future that's made in America. And that's not hyperbole. It's about being made in America. A lot of that has to do with this industry.
Boom, you saw it. Made in America. It was made in America. I don't know why I'm so happy about him getting pooped on, but here we go. Okay, let's go before the poop. I'm going to mute it. It's going in slow motion here. Boom. You see it? Let's do it again. Let's go back here. There we go. Right here. It's going to hit right any second now. Here it comes. Blow. He's looking here. JoJo Magoo got pooped on. Made in America, JoJo. One of my other viewers sent me this. JoJo Magoo's talking about gun manufacturers, and he says something that doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know if they're trying to screw him. I'll talk about that in a moment.
Manufacturers immunity from liability. We're the only outfit. We're the only outfit in the country that is immune. Imagine had the tobacco industry been immune to prostitutes being sued.
To prostitutes being sued. I think he might have said prosecution of being sued, but he said prostitutes being sued. Watch, it's going to say it right here.
Imagine had the tobacco industry been immune to prostitutes being sued.
So they know he messed up. Like, they're not even trying to cover for him on YouTube. And, Joe doesn't want them what if the tobacco industry, you couldn't sue their prostitutes, right? And it used to be you couldn't sue the tobacco industry, right? They were, it took a while before that all played out. But there is one other group, there's one other thing out there. I can't remember. They have a whole court system in which the government pays for the lawsuits that he's forgetting about here, much like when he forgot about Kamala Harris in that epic gaffe when he was in the debate with Cory Booker. But that's JoJo Magoo. So this is one William J. Smith. It's actually Willard is his real name. Willard J. Smith. He's about to, screw himself in the future. This is Willard J. Smith from the past, who's about to screw himself in the future.
Trying to develop a more realistic perspective.
Exactly, more realistic perspective. He's in one of these actors' roundtables, right, with Samuel L. Jackson and Mark Ruffalo and other people.
Of what this business is. I told my mother this the other day.
He was just telling his mother this the other day.
She thought it was hilarious. I said, when I was 15 years old, my first girlfriend cheated on me.
Oh.
And I remember making a decision that nobody would ever cheat on me again.
We all know how that worked out for you.
And the way I was going to do that is by being the biggest actor on earth.
Huh.
Right? So there's
whoa. Like, he's just like, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, they're all like, that's effed up. Like, why are you even telling us that? Like, it's difficult for him because he always has to dominate and be the center of attention and control. He's a real control freak, right? Well, he pretends to be this really nice guy. But we all know that Jada banged his son's friend. So Jaden brought a friend home, Augustusina, and Jada took a liking to him, and she was hating Will. And so she said to Will, hey, I want to bang Jaden's friend. And Will said, okay. And then they got caught many years later, and she brought him on the Red Table Talk to make it like, okay, we knew about this, and we, but didn't talk about his maybe multiple affairs with other dudes himself or any of these other things. So it kind of left her hanging. So either he's a cuck and she's cheated on him, or he's been, they're not together a lot, right? They spend most of their time apart. And so they have a weird fake relationship, and he's a weird fake dude. And he was so upset about his girlfriend cheating on him, he thought he would be the world's top actor. And that would solve the problem of him getting cucked. But it didn't. And then it's the reaction of all these guys are like, what are you telling us for? This is, what's wrong with this guy, right? He's not psychologically put together very well.
There's been this weird psychology that I've always felt like if my movies are number one, my life is going to work out great.
And we all know that didn't happen. So this is younger Willow Smith.
Mom, I just love you so much, and I just want you to feel a tiny little bit of the gratitude and the love that you have given me.
Okay, well, how's that going to play out? She's going to do that ghastly singing she does. That's how she shows her mom her love, by singing like a cat just got run over in the driveway. She's dancing. Well, Jada's digging it. So she showed up with her band and performed for her mom. So this is CNBC now. And one of my viewers sent me this. This is the post I want to show you. CNN struggles to lure viewers in its early days, drawing fewer than 10,000 daily users. Fewer than 10,000 people are using CNN Plus on a daily basis 2 weeks into its existence. So that's that, they had all these CNN Plus. They were going to let their hair down, and Anderson Cooper was going to have, a different kind of show, and they weren't going to wear suits and ties. And they're going to be more like, all of us here on social media. They were going to stop being these anchormen on a big old desk, and they were going to try this app, and people are going to watch it on, their iPad or their phone or whatever it is, or watch, I don't know. And it was going to be more relaxed. And it was this joint venture with Warner Brothers and Discovery and all these things, and it's bombing, right? They only get 10,000 users, and CNN is a massive news organization, and they're not getting crap for views, right? Overall, CNN averaged a 773,000 total viewers across a 23-hour period, with only 185,000 of them being in the desirable 25 to 54 age range. So that's not enough to keep the lights on. They must be getting supplemented by somebody or whatever, because they're not getting enough views, right? Like, this is nothing. Like, this is I get over 1 million views a month, right? Just my one channel. You think about, like, all the big YouTube channels out there, some of them get millions of views a day. They're only getting 773 across their massive network in a 24-hour period, and their stupid app is tanking with only 10,000 daily users. Like, so CNN is plummeting. So I got this message from Google AdSense, and it says, important notice update regarding Ukraine. Dear publisher, due to the war in the Ukraine, we will pause monetization of content that exploits, dismisses, or condones the war. Now, I don't exploit or condone the war, and I've been very careful about the imagery that I use, because CNN will demonetize you for showing graphic images, right? And so the only thing they could accuse me of is maybe I don't dismiss the war. I just talk about it, in the sense of like in contrast to Americans' war, right? That the coverage is different, more than I'm talking about the coverage than anything else, right? But this means I probably can't even do that, and it's very iffy. Please note we're already enforcing claims related to the war in Ukraine when they violate existing policies. For instance, the dangerous degradation content policy prohibits monetizing content that incites violence or denies tragic events. This update is meant to clarify, in some cases expand our publisher's guidance as it relates to this conflict. The pause includes, but does not limit, claims that imply victims are responsible for their own tragedy, or similar instances of victim blaming, such as the claims that the Ukraine is committing genocide or deliberately attacking its own citizens. Sincerely, the Global AdSense team. And so, that's weird, right? That takes things to another kind of a level. Selena Gomez hits back at body critics. I'm perfect the way I am. Selena Gomez said bye to her body shamers. Only Murderers in the Building star said on TikTok that trying to stay skinny is not worth missing out on delicious foods. So I'm trying to stay skinny, but I went to Jack in the Box and I got 4 tacos, 3 egg rolls, onion rings, and spicy chicken sandwich, she said, on a clip posted to her account. But honestly, I don't care about my weight because people bitch about it anyway. And, totally healthy. I'm fine with that, right? Like, I think people are way obsessed about their weight. I don't know about Jack in the Box, though, in terms of health. But whatever, right? She's young, 29. So here's what she had to say.
Honestly, I don't care about my weight because people bitch about it anyway. You're too small. You're too big. That doesn't fit. Meh, 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 meh. I am perfect the way I am.
Now, I would agree with most of what she said. Of course, the Jack in the Box thing, The problem is saying I am perfect the way I am, right? It's good to accept the way you are, right? If you want to look at the physical aspects, right, your weight, your appearance, your features, no one's ever going to feel like they're perfect. I mean, they shouldn't. And if you do, you're kind of messed up. But in terms of who you are as a person, we're here to grow and get better, right? I mean, that's part of what the Heartfulness System's about, where you're working on your character qualities and you're always improving, and you can always find room for improvement. And you can always learn more and develop more. And, where you're in a constant state of growth, right? One of the problems with our educational system is that it takes the joy out of learning, and then people end up getting educated and don't think they need to learn anymore, right? They're not developing anything else, no skills, no, anything. That's why you see elderly people going back to school and taking courses and things because, it's important for people to have goals and to be evolving. And so if you start off with this idea of being perfect, well, then you have no chance of that, right? It's a good thing to just be able to eat healthily and, do whatever you need to do in terms of, like the obsession with being skinny is a real problem. I mean, people's food obsessions and body obsessions. So, yeah, it's good to be just natural, but also realize, that you're always growing, right? Like there's no, sense of perfection. I'm perfect the way I am. It's just a weird saying. And so then it says, the Lose You to Love Me songstress shared in 2020 a live stream with fellow Disney alum Miley Cyrus that she'd been diagnosed with a bipolar disorder, which, she shares with Kanye. That's Kanye's superpower. I felt a huge weight lifted off of me when I found out. I could take a deep breath and go, okay, that explains so much, right? And she actually has some good music. I don't know very much about her personally, but I think my daughter had some of her songs on her iPhone, and I listened to them, and we like them as a family, right? And so I have some of her music, and I don't, like pop music. It might be the fact that she's bipolar that also makes, like I said, Kanye thinks it's his superpower. But, believing you're perfect is never a good thing. Ezra Miller dances wildly by themselves in video filmed weeks ago after arrest. This is this actor who plays the Flash dancing wildly and was arrested at some point in the, there's somebody filming, and there's Ezra Miller. Kim Kardashian, Pete Davidson double date with Jeff Bezos and Laura Sanchez. They don't quite look like a couple. Simon Cowell, done with Botox. I might have gone a bit too far. Well, the first time you use something that's basically a neurotoxin to paralyze the nerves in your face so you'll look younger, you've gone too far. Okay, so for continuing from where I left off yesterday, just a few more things to get to this morning. Thandie Newton axed from Magic Mike's sequel after fight with Channing Tatum over Oscar fiasco. Channing Newton was reportedly fired from the new Magic Mike movie. I think this is a third movie, and I think these are about male strippers, right? After getting into a heated argument on the set with Channing Tatum about Will Smith's infamous Oscar smackdown of Chris Rock. The feud between Newton 49 and Channing Tatum 41 occurred in early April, the Sun reported, and escalated to an astonishing and unimaginable vicious levels that Tatum stormed off the West London set of Magic Mike's The Last Dance and drove off in a car. It's The Last Dance, so do they really need three movies about male strippers? But then it says here, it was unclear from the Sun's report exactly when the epic dust-up occurred or what position Newton and Tatum took in their heated debate. And so this fake slap, whatever it was like, some level of stagecraft, right? And is causing a ripple in Hollywood. I mean, this could also go under by Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies. They're losing it. Like, this caused her to get fired, and she's been replaced by Selma Hayek, right? You might know her from the Westworld series and a bunch of other movies. But this slap thing with Chris Rock and Will Smith has had residual effects, right? And also, Sad Dumpling, Amy Schumer, I was made fun of for calling Will Smith's slap traumatizing. She also hinted that she was going to give a joke about Alec Baldwin that she didn't do at the Oscars, but she said that anything goes at her live shows. So she's still trying to get people to go see her. And she's saying she withheld jokes at the Oscars about Alec Baldwin so that she could draw more people into her live shows. She clarified then on Howard Stern, but I don't think it was traumatizing for me. I think it was traumatizing for all of us, right? Because she was still triggered and traumatized. It was a slap, right? And, it was about toxic masculinity. One thing I want to say about this is Hollywood culture and this idea of toxic masculinity and how much feminism has taken over movies and TV shows, the feminist agenda and the liberal point of view and this idea of toxic masculinity, which Hollywood has pushed out male violence and the male violent tough guy for years, right? And now they've reversed themselves. But they have everything to do with that, right? But they had this moment where an act of violence took place, right? And, I don't know how much they were in on it or not. But this was their impotent response. They went up to Chris Rock and said, should we call the cops? And should we have him removed? And Chris Rock said no. Now, in the official story, Chris Rock would be the victim, right? he made a joke and, he used words, and Will Smith could have got up and, said something, made fun of Chris Rock. But instead, he took it to another level and was violent, right? That's the official story. Like, people who believe what they saw there, that's what they saw. And so, in terms of the Oscars, going to the person who just got physically assaulted, which was, a felony, and asking the victim if the perpetrator should be removed. I mean, they don't ask, in domestic violence situations, they take the husband out of even if it's the wife who's, that's just how they do it, because, in a domestic violence situation, they almost always remove the husband. Even if the wife says no, right? Even if it's the neighbors who called and the wife, they don't even get into whose fault it is. They usually remove the husband because he's the bigger and stronger of the two people, usually, right, in most cases. And so the policy is usually to remove the husband. There are some, extenuating circumstances, but they usually remove somebody. In the more mild cases, maybe not. Depends where it is and, past history. But if there's a domestic abuse situation where the husband's beating the wife, right, or whatever, there's one person beating the other person, then the victim, the person getting beaten, will be scared and will often say, please don't remove him, don't punish him, it's just going to get worse for me when they get back, right? And so if this thing was legitimate and Chris Rock actually was physically assaulted by Will Smith without it being planned or any of these things, then Chris Rock would be rattled, and Will Smith is considerably bigger than Chris Rock. And so the victim, in a state of shock, isn't the most reliable source in, dealing with a sort of, escalated situation. Everybody kind of knows that. You don't ask the victim to determine what's supposed to happen. You should have policies and rules in place. And in Hollywood's case, they're anti-bullying and they're, all these things, anti-toxic masculinity. And, even though they've pitched it for years, right, they're the ones who established the warlike culture and all the aggression and violence in movies and TV shows. But now they've changed their policies, and they had a real life situation. And again, whether it's staged or not doesn't really matter, because this is based in appearances, which is everything Hollywood is. They had an opportunity to act in a judicious and, thoughtful way and remove the aggressor from the situation, and they failed, right? Hollywood and the Oscars had a chance to deal with something that at least some of them weren't expecting, right? Maybe they all were, maybe they weren't, right? But the way they handled it was to leave Will Smith in there in the building after he assaulted another person. They'd later come together about 2 weeks later and administer some punishment for him. But they gave him an award, and he got a standing ovation, right? And so there's so much against toxic masculinity and violence that they had this moment to kick him out of there, right? Escort him out. Of course, there's stagecraft and all these things to do with it. And they left him in there, right? So stop talking about being, against these things when that was your reaction, right? Hollywood sucks. I mean, when they had a chance to do something, and which would be immediately remove the perpetrator from the crime scene, and they should have gotten the police involved, at least security. They let Will Smith sit there for the rest of the, he could have got up and went backstage and, slapped Chris Rock again or whatever, right? And so he was obviously triggered. And, if he was in a bar, they would probably remove him, right? Most cases. Most social situations, they would remove him, because it's not like he just slapped him and let it go. Then he was verbally threatening him from his seat, and they were, there's no security between them, right? Like people, you see any kind of fight or fake fight, you see it in like a basketball game or, something where people are posturing, that he's made physical contact. There's a felony, right, where he's assaulted him. And then there's the battery where he's, verbally abusing him and still triggered and could go off again. Like, you don't know if he's unstable. And so there was only one decision to make, and that's remove the guy, right? You have to remove him. But they, gave him an award, right? Instead, they, you know, they give the guy an award and he gets a standing ovation for some organization that is all about being woke and, you know, anti-bullying and all these things, right? This is their chance to do something. And it took them a couple of weeks to come up with some, lame kind of punishment when Will Smith has more or less disappeared anyway and withdrew from the Academy. And so a complete failure on Hollywood's part. I mean, they talk a big game, but deep down when they had a chance to do something differently and, put their money where their mouth is, they failed. One of my friends on Instagram sent me this. Friend reveals why Madonna refuses to grow old gracefully. And it says, puffy cheek and bleary-eyed and with huge lips that seemed to grow menacingly as she approached the camera, Madonna's visage on April 3rd TikTok video, set to the tune of her song Frozen, stirred up plenty of controversy. Someone wondered whether she'd gone overboard in tweaking her appearance in a desperate attempt to stay young. Others deemed her latest calculated move to ensure people are still talking about her. Friends who admit the singer hires people to remove any sign of wrinkle on her social media photos say it's a lot of both. She works hard on staying younger looking because she likes to feel younger, said a dancer friend of the 63-year-old. She hangs around with younger people because she finds people her age stuffy and boring. And this is her current boyfriend who is 27, and this is not what her face looks like, right? They've altered her appearance in an illusion, she's looks a certain way, which we now know, right? We've known for a while. And they've used Photoshop and all these things to try to make her look like she's a similar age demographic and group as he is, but she is over twice his age, right? She is more than twice this guy's age. So I've been covering this for, 4, 5, 6 years. I don't know how long. That Madam Expiration Date didn't want to accept the natural aging process and the fate of her career, both things. That she was no longer relevant. She was desperate for attention and she needed to be fed. I have a whole long video in which I found an old comment that she made about her Material Girl video and all of that, right? That era where she was the number one in the 80s and beginning of the 90s, and she was constantly being talked about in tabloids and all these things. And she said she needed to be fed, like she needed all that energy. And she has to subsist on being propped up by her fame and her youth, right? And the pop music game is something for young people. Pop music is about young people and young people's stuff. And, you enter into these various phases. And, it's not like, it happens all at once, right? You just slowly get older and different things are expected of you and you have to rise up and take positions that were, formerly held by older people, right? Like you have to take responsibilities and things you didn't have to worry about when you were a kid. And all of a sudden you're, now an adult and people expect adult things from you, but you're still the same person. Now you just have to, pull things out of yourself, maturity and things, and you enter into different stages. And some of it has to do with your physical internal workings and the longevity, the experiences you've had in your life, right? Both things add up to you being, maturing and being an older person. Like I've talked about this before, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was running for some reason, right? And I had run for, maybe a year or two. And I was like, running. I'm like, oh my God, I'm running like an old fat guy. And I was like, well, and so you look in the mirror, all of a sudden, oh wow, I'm an old person, right? And so it's just your body starts to age, but internally, it's not your appearance. It isn't like you can fix your appearance and your organs are going to get younger. And, the wear and tear and the toxins you've ingested and all the, emotional things you've been through that have sucked some of your life energy, right? You have a temporary situation here on planet Earth, right? And as you get older, you have to embrace some of these different, ways of being, things that you used to, laugh at or mock when you were a young person are now things that you are embracing, right? Whatever it might be. And, it's time to move forward and embrace that role. And you're, slowly accepting your own mortality. And as you get older, your mind and your heart, in the heartfulness meditation drifts away into your, your spiritual essence more and more, right? You're more looking forward to, and you're preparing for your journey home back to the source, right? And, which is, it's just natural. And you're less about your material world, your material success, and your appearance, and trying to, all the things that you were concerned about when you were young. And so you have to prepare for the next stage. Like, that's one thing we don't do well in our society. There's no rite of passage, and all of a sudden you're a father or mother, and you realize that your life, your individual life is over, in terms of, and not over, but you're now, you're putting these kids and your relationship ahead of your own needs, right? You find yourself in these positions, and, you're like, wow, this is really happening. Like, this is something when you were a kid, you thought about maybe, but, we don't prepare for them. There's no, like I said, rite of passage, acknowledgement of, moving forward into these different stages in your life, and, preparing and accepting each stage of life when it comes. And then ultimately the stage of life where your life ends, and being able to transition, your soul returns to the etheric world, and you are, you're, in a way that it's not, you're not clinging to your body and to some, false materialistic type of situation here, right? Materialistic sensory stimulation and happiness. You've accepted that you're, as you get older, you don't enjoy things the same way anymore, because your body, your liver doesn't work as well, and it's just, you have to watch what you eat and all these things, right? And Madonna, Madam Expiration Date, is the ultimate, and Will Smith is up there, but not as bad as she is, and somebody who just doesn't want to accept their mortality and their, the end of their fame and things. She's got like something like $860 million worth of wealth, right? Almost a billionaire. And she's had all this success. Instead of going gracefully, she's still trying to be, I think she identifies between the ages of 18, 19, and like 26, 27, right? There's a stage where you're 28, where it's your, every 7 years Saturn comes by. There's all these astrological things that happen. And when you turn 28, it's a significant year, right? I found heartfulness when I was 29. And so like there's just a level of transition that happens at that age, right? Into the adult years of your 30s, and then, it's all physically downhill from there, right? And it's almost like it's not a midway point, but there's a definite, thing that happens between your 20s and your 30s, and then, that continues on until like you're in your 60s or 70s or whatever it is, right? That phase of your life. And so Madonna just won't accept it. That's why I've called her Madam Expiration Date. And now everyone's realizing, when they saw that video, they're starting to see what I've been talking about for years. Somebody who's desperately trying to find something and hang on to something that's long since passed her by. So a variety of people have sent me this. This is Saudi Arabia comedy show. And you have two Saudi Arabian men, one who was in, they're both in whiteface, and this person is a man dressed up like Kamala Harris. JoJo Magoo comes out and then starts to wander off stage, and that dude who's playing Kamala brings him back, right? Brings him to the podium, says he's got to speak.
Today, we're going to talk about the crisis in Spain. Yeah, we're going to talk about the crisis in Africa. Yeah, Russia. Yeah.
So, they're mocking the crap out of JoJo Magoo and talking about how he's senile, and Kamala is his handler.
Russia. And I want to talk about the president of Russia, Putin. Yeah, Putin. Putin, listen to me. I have very important message to you. The message is,
He starts to snooze.
and the president of China, oh, I didn't finish Russia. Thank you to correct me, First Lady.
Okay, so you get the idea. It's not hilarious, but this is one of America's biggest allies, especially in that region, and is the big force behind keeping the American petrodollar going, right? you know, and so this is, and they're now threatening to sell oil in the Chinese yuan, and so the end of the petrodollar, and they're completely disparaging JoJo Magoo. I should say a little bit more about this. One of America's biggest allies and the biggest ally in the Middle East other than Israel is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has, run OPEC and has, just in a sense had America's back and the petrodollar's back for years, right? And so they're openly mocking JoJo Magoo as being mentally incompetent in their, TV shows in ways that he isn't mocked on Saturday Night Live or by late night comedians here. And that should be shocking to everyone because Saudi Arabia has a lot of, rules in terms of their, conservative culture. And this is just a slap in the face to JoJo Magoo, the media, and Hollywood and everybody else, right? Because this is one of the most important allies that America has. And they're saying that this guy has dementia. The leader, he's incompetent, can't be trusted. I mean, that's, like he's not even capable of giving a speech, which we know he has all these gaffes. And the media is so not covering his dementia, right? Like, you just think about how bad the system is. This guy's in charge of all the things that are going on right now. And the censorship on social media and things, and, the lack of having any sort of oppositional criticism, and it's like the emperor has no clothes type of a moment here. It's absolutely brutal, right? Not that it was funny, but it's, true. Like, it's worse than, it's, I didn't laugh, but, I'm like, yeah, they've sort of got, this whole Kamala thing being his handler and all these things. All of that, right? Which is whatever that is. But, the rest of it is just spot on, right? In terms of his inability to just give a speech, right? Which is a big part of his job. And basically the only thing he seems to be doing now. So to go back to this Google AdSense email I received, and somebody left the exact same thing in the comment section of one of my videos, I think on my other channel. But anyways, AdSense is where you get paid for your ads on YouTube, right? So they have an AdSense program because people used to run ads on websites and things. That's where I originally had some ads on my website years ago, and then started to, they had the monetization program for YouTube, which they folded in to AdSense. And I think it's kind of confusing because YouTube has sort of outgrown I believe it's, bigger in terms of the amount of ads that are being run on YouTube, but it's still a part of the Google AdSense program. And so, with them taking sort of a hard line and in terms of financial incentivization of, and it's not just here, like I'm aware of the other policies. And when you get into a situation where things are debatable, right, where there could be a different way to look at something, there could be another side of the story than the one the government's giving to you, the one the media's given to you, and now social media. And so very recently, there's all these things that have happened where there's only one side of the story being represented by the media, the government, and the powers that be. Everybody's on the same page, but there's many people, maybe the majority of people, that don't agree with it, right? There's been social agenda and policies, in the past 5 years that have come out, and if you're against these things or you have a different side of a different opinion, you're either demonized. If you're a famous person, you're demonized by the powers that be. If you're, somebody posts on social media, you're censored or, whatever it might be, right? You're constrained in some way. So you're only able to voice your opinion. And again, these are privately owned companies, right? These are companies that aren't, they're not governmental run, where freedom of speech would come into play, because in a privately run organization, freedom of speech doesn't apply, right? So people always say, they're censoring my freedom of speech. No, they're not. You have a financial relationship with YouTube. Like I have a financial, business relationship with YouTube. I'm not their employee, but they hold all the cards in terms of the power of what they can, censor or not, right? And all these social media platforms, they have all the power. And you're a user on their platform, and you have to submit to their rules, or they just can get rid of you in any way they see fit. So it's not it's not really a partnership in that sense. But what happens is when you start forcing one side of the story, one side of the equation on people, especially in a binary system where there is, a left-right paradigm, and then you mess up the balance. Because the way the left-right paradigm works is that both sides have power. There's what they call parity in the NFL or the NBA. They want to have, they don't like dynasties, right? They don't want a single team to win every year. They don't want the Democrats or the Republicans to hold power forever, right? They have to, it's only for every 4 years or 8 years. And then they hope to get a president from a different party. And every 2 years there's elections, midterm elections and things. And there's supposed to be some self-correcting mechanism where both parties, both groups of people, feel like they have power at some point, right? And they get mad, they get wound up, right? The losing party gets really upset about, losing the presidency or losing the, whatever it is, the control of the House or the Senate. And the other side gets apathetic, right? They've just won, so they're not as wound up, so they're not as activated. And so they'll end up getting power very soon because the anger and the energies on the minority, the minority representatives of the left or the right paradigm, whoever is, not in power. I mean, minority in the sense of, what they call like the minority whip, right? The party that's not in power is the minority. But what's happened now is that social media is where the news is. And so you have Fox News and CNN, but no one really watches CNN anymore, or MSNBC. And only a small percentage of people watch Fox. And most of the people are in the older demographics, right? Not the desirable younger demographics. So the majority of people are getting their information on social media. And social media is run by people who lean to the left. There's very little representation of right-wing people who run all the major social media platforms, and even the smaller ones. And the companies are now run by mostly liberal leaning people. And the powers that be realize that they have to choose a side in terms of the system collapsing, and what their agenda has to be pushed through in a majority type fashion where they squelch all the opposing opinions, things that don't agree with their agenda, and just push it through, right? They are, in a sense, blowing up the system. And so in terms of Republicans and Democrats, that really doesn't matter anymore. And in terms of Fox News, that doesn't matter anymore either. It's all the social media, the powers that be in the social media, and to some extent Hollywood, that has control of the movies and TV shows, and they're pushing a certain agenda and narratives throughout their, whatever their programming. And so you feel this pressure that, and in your life where you work at and whatever, I mean, there's just all this pressure where they're telling you you're wrong, and if you speak up, they're going to put you in a certain category. So people are feeling pressure even in their personal lives because all the power, there's this idea of the authority that says this is who's right. The fact checker is right. These are the people who are right. These are the people who are wrong. And if you're in the wrong category with all the, escalated sort of trauma, escalated fear and, everything that's going on, panic, that now everyone's turning on the so-called truth community and people in the right wing, which aren't the same thing, because the right wing, you're still caught in a binary system. The people in the truth community are saying that the whole system is rigged in one way or another, right? But now they're just, picking one side. They're picking winners and losers, and the people on the right are the losers. And so what happens is you have a chance of complete radicalization of the right, where, and this is what they've been, still called scared of with Trump and the Trumpers, is when you forcibly have people, like you're putting like a hand around their throat and won't let them express themselves even on social media. It builds a resentment, right? It builds a, hostility and a resentment, especially a group that in the past was, a little bit more favored, and they think this is, they're entitled to more power or whatever it is, right? And that's how right-wing people feel, especially ones who are, successful in a smaller way. They're not celebrities. They're not, billionaires, but they're millionaires in some cases, right? And all of a sudden they're saying, everything that you believe in is wrong and you yourself are, some sort of privileged, entitled person. And so the dynamics, the power dynamics have shifted, right? And that builds like a resentment because there's no pressure cooker. There's no way to release the pressure that's building up. And so this is where the division is going to happen in our country. And the left is being told the same thing, or they're being, that you've had a rigged system against you and it's these other people's fault, not the people who run the system, the left-right paradigm, but the people on the other side are the ones that have been keeping you down. And so this is what they're, building up to, right? That whenever there's a, big event, there's some sort of controversial, the war, COVID, whatever it might be, recent things. Whenever there's some sort of, big newsworthy event, there's only one opinion on it. And all of their opinions are just wrong, and you're just wrong. And if you express those opinions, you're going to be punished somehow. You're either going to be censored through, being deplatformed or something, or they're going to, not monetize or pay you for your work, right? Which is the situation I'm in here. And for me, I don't care. Like, I personally don't have to talk about any specific issue, right? Like, the issues that are there are all, for me, a vehicle to, demonstrate my position or opinion that everything they've been telling you about success in this system and the system itself, is a lie, right? It's a deception. It's to keep you away from your true purpose here, your soul's purpose, which is to connect to God in a deeper level and to move forward on a spiritual path. Not happiness, not what we consider happiness, not what we consider success in the material world. That the material world, the life that you live, is to be sacrificed in a sense so that you can move forward spiritually. Like I said, the Oprah Winfrey spiritual movement is about sacrificing your spiritual life so you can have a better material life. So it's really, demonic or satanic in that sense, right? Because your soul is eternal and this life is temporary. And so it's using this life to move forward on a spiritual path. And, the heartfulness meditation that I do is something that, facilitates that connection, that internal connection that God's within, and having a relationship with God, and then not making your decisions based only on pleasure and happiness, right? What's best for you. That just breeds selfishness, and, your wants, your desires are infinite. And so for me, it doesn't matter. Like, I just talk about something else because my central, point or argument here is that the system, what they're telling you, doesn't work. That there has to be something more to life, which is, your divine purpose. What's your soul's purpose? What's your soul's path? What's your relationship with the divine? And how can you use this life to facilitate movement, continuous positive movement on your spiritual journey. And all these rules that they're put in are just demonstrating, that the system's breaking down and that I'm right about all these things, right? That they have to control people's opinions. They have to, censor people. They can't allow you to express yourself on certain, subject matters. And, who cares? Like, your opinion, who really cares? Because your audience likes your opinion, right? And there's people who are controversial in the news media all the time that represent the devil's advocate. And they're the ones that create the energy and the movement to make things interesting. There's shock jocks and people like that. And there could be, a group of advertisers who would only advertise on, or who wouldn't care if they were, their ads appeared on people who had the opposite opinion, right? Like YouTube and AdSense could structure their advertising program to, match up your content with available, whatever it is, right? Like the whole reason behind this would be that your advertisers, the people who are paying their, to place ads on your videos, weren't okay with you saying certain things about this subject or that subject. So they demonetized the video as saying that we have to appease our advertisers, but there's plenty of advertisers out there that would, who are looking for that audience, the right-wing people or the truther people. I mean, the truther movement is such a big demographic now that there could be a lot of advertisers appealing to it, because there's some fringe ads out there. I stop when I'm fast forwarding through the commercials. Every once in a while I'll see something that's so, feminist in nature or so left. I mean, you'll just see it without even like just the images themselves, and I'll go back and my wife and I will watch the ad and we'll be shaking our heads about how bad the ad is, and we're like, we'll never, purchase that product, right? They are so leaning to the left and so offensive in what their, agenda is. They're so woke in their presentation. Their shows that we're watching, they've always some of it. You got to accept some of it now that they're going to push this agenda. I mean, but the more manipulative it is, the more, forced it is, the worse the show is, or the movie. And so a lot of times we're not watching this, right? And so, I mean, there's things out there, and there's huge amounts of people who don't go along with it, and they keep on forcing it down our throats. And it might be as many as 60%, right? It's a high level of people. They just don't care anymore because the system's collapsing. This shows you the system collapses when they don't care about the customer base anymore. My entire life, they always cared about the customer base. But in the last 5 years, the customer is no longer always right. There's, corporate power, and there's, social media power, and there's Hollywood power, and there's the traditional news media power, and there's the governmental power. And now they're all tilting to one side. The governmental power, it still seems like there's Republicans and Democrats, but the reality is the money behind those politicians is, for the most part, the same, right? And it's all pushing in this one-sided agenda. And they could have picked the right. I mean, they could have easily just picked the right for all you right-wing people. That's why your position is not, it's not a valid position, because it just happens to be that the right-wing people are on the wrong side now. They're on the weaker position, but they could have picked the right to push this agenda, but they chose the left, right? And so it's not a matter of, you being right because you're a right-wing person. You just happen to be on the wrong side. They're going to flip a coin. They chose one side or the other to push this agenda through, the agenda of a collapsing society and a new economic and social reset. And so, it just happens that the left wing was better for them. And, most of the people who were on board with this thing were already leaning to the left, the so-called left, because it's not true liberalism. There's great things about the liberal movement, right? There's things about the environment. There's things about organic foods. I mean, there's things that they've brought, into our society that have made the society better, right? There's always this element of people who don't want change and people who want change. Like, that's one way to break down society. But people in the truth community are now change agents, in a different way. But, this idea of make America great again sucked. Like Trump was was a complete shill, and it wasn't, America was never great in the way that, maybe great for you and your, people like you. And so the right wing, has their elements of being so pro-war and all these things over the years. And the conservative movement, true conservatism is about the proper utilization of your resources. And so there's a lot of that, immorality in the so-called Republican conservative community, who are more pushing the military-industrial complex and the spy agenda, right, all these things. And the right-wing people had no problem with this when it was on their side, right? Herbert Hoover and the things to do with anti-communism and anti-liberalism and squishing the hippie movement, right? The Republicans and the conservatives were, good at pushing back against change and, a lot of the negative behaviors and the like sins of the past not coming to light. And so there's that. There's the stifling of progress. But now the progress they're pushing is demonic and satanic, right? Like a lot of the progress they're pushing far exceeds technological progress, which itself has had a huge negative impact, right? Where the internet and cyber lives and, people's, their life in the so-called cyber world, right? Where they're in the real world, IRL, they have a term for in the real world where, they spend less time in the real world. Did that happen in the real world or in the cyber world, right? Where families are divided and people are isolated, and then to say nothing of the electromagnetic pollution that's talked about in the Whispers of the Brighter World messages from the Heartfulness System that has a negative effect on the subtle bodies and the soul and all these things, right? On top of the physical issues that it involves. And sure, is that something new? Yes. Is it progressive? Well, it's better than, the old technology. The technology is evolving, but human beings are de-evolving, right? Human beings are less than what they used to be. They're purging vocabulary words and IQ points, right? People are not as strong, they're not as physically strong. They're more sickly. Young people have chronic diseases. There's an emotional weakness. There's a disconnect and inability to have social relationships, right? I mean, think about where human beings are now and where human beings used to be. And then the skills that people have, the inability to cook, the inability to, on every level, people have less abilities than they used to. They're lower functioning. We're not, when I first started to homestead years ago, I realized, wow, people knew a lot more stuff and had a lot more skills than we do now, right? And reclaiming all those skills are, it's overwhelming, right? It's overwhelming to, all the things that our system now does for us to have to do for ourselves. And then the relationships we have to form and rebuilding local communities and neighborhoods. I mean, this is a post-apocalyptic nightmare problem that awaits people. And then all the, things that you're given, pharmaceutical medicines and, foods and things shipped from, globally, like just Amazon and having things just delivered to your door and, from all around the world, right? And the whole global economy and, poor people in other countries making your stuff, right? And you having to do almost nothing but just click a button on your phone or computer and get it to your home or go to the store or whatever it might be. But instead of that, like just being able to have foods that you can grow locally and produce locally. I mean, the level of choice, then, the level amount of choices you have drastically shrink, right? I mean, corn is, a monoculture type of crop. And corn makes it into pretty much every food that you consume in one way or another in America. But in somewhere else it would be wheat or rice or whatever it is, right? Depending on the climate. And those foods you have to eat, instead of being ground up and put in your fast food, whatever that's made out of corn or something, your fake burger you get at McDonald's or something, or these processed foods, you would have to eat it the way it is in a more, oh yeah, here, I'm having corn again, right? So, you have these staples and things. And there's just so many foods, so many fruits that grow locally, so many vegetables, and whatever else type of, meats and things that you eat. And so it'll be like a, completely different menu than you've had before. And that's not just food, but it's everything. Things that you can make locally, the kind of fabric you can grow, the kind of, materials, cotton in some places, but, whatever it is, right? And so it'll be, based in your local ability, your local economy, your local, tribal type of situation to produce, everything in the future. So what we've had is unsustainable progress, things that are considered progressive, but people are getting worse, right? People are not like they used to be. And, there's a desire to be more. People are fed up just as the system's collapsing, there's just this desire to connect with nature and, spend more time as being a natural human and feeling confined and limited to your choices because your choices are shrinking because, the freedoms that you used to have are going to go along with this, agenda that they're pushing. And of course, the system's collapsing anyway. And so they're desperately trying to grab more control and power over your voice and your opinions and force, their opinions and their agenda down your throat. At the same time, your choices are shrinking and your ability to, live your life in a natural way and things like this are taken away. And, all the things that you were promised and your ancestors were promised by this new economic model are disappearing. And so it's like a combination of all these things and people are just going to start to like pop, right? They're going to just start. You can see it with the celebrity culture, right? And then all the stuff to do with all these other agendas that are moving forward, wars and disease and pestilence and the apocalypse and things like this. And so that's what's happening. People who are low functioning and who were promised things that were not good for them, but they've become attached to and addicted to are being removed. And their, ability to, have any power and say in this world is, illusionary. The illusionary aspect of that is collapsing, right? And you have these policies that show you everything I've been saying for, years now. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.